Hi everyone, my name is Eric Maloney and welcome to the channel. I really haven't done anything like this before. I mean, I've talked to the camera a couple times for behind the scenes stuff for my road reel shorts, but talking with an audience, it's new. And speaking of audience, we're at 118 subscribers. Thank you all so much. I mean, I'm just appreciative that people are just clicking to watch the content, and the fact that y'all are liking it and commenting and subscribing, it means a lot. And just thank you. I really don't know what else to say. You know, share your work with me. I'd love to see your work, and also just, you know, when you see some of my films, feel free to give critiques, you know, even if it's harsh criticism. I appreciate it. I really do enjoy just hearing what you guys think of my content and just sharing the love, and you know, I'd love to do the same for you all as well. I really want to turn this channel into a community of creatives who are coming together to make stories that they want to tell and share with others. So yeah, let's dive into the review of the Canon R6. So yeah, this is my Canon R6 with the 100 to 400 on it. I also have a 24 to 70. This camera works for me. It's been my dream camera for a while. I mean, beforehand it was a Canon 1DX Mark III, but this is honestly a 1DX Mark III in a smaller body, which I really appreciate. And so it is a great camera, but let's kind of talk about the point of the video here, which you saw from the title, is that I think that the Canon R6 is a great cinema camera. And I know you're probably confused. You're like, it's a mirrorless DSLR camera. It's not a cinema camera. A cinema camera is the Canon C200 or C500, the Red Epic, the Arri Alexa. And yes, they qualify as cinema cameras. They're very much cinema cameras. They have those features, but this is what a cinema camera means to me. It's the camera that lets me tell the stories that I want to create in the style I want to create them. That's a cinema camera to me. Do I eventually want the C500 or a Red or something like that? Yes, I would love to have one of those. I think that, you know, that opens up the doors for bigger projects and bigger productions and distribution possibilities and stuff like that when I want to get to that point eventually. Now I'm just creating short films for YouTube and maybe eventually just some small film festivals and stuff like that. So for me, the Canon R6 works, and I'm going to talk about why it works. It works for a variety of reasons, and also there are some limitations, which I'll get into throughout the review and at the end as well. But yeah, let's talk about image quality first. So yeah, let's talk about the text, the specifications. The Canon R6 shoots in 1080p up to 120 frames a second, and then up to 60p in 4K. And so that 4K is also downsampled from 5.1K. So, fun little fact about me, I don't shoot 4K. I know there's some videos that show up 4K. That's because I upscale them to 4K from 1080p in Premiere. The reason is 1080p just works for me. I mean, my original camera, the one I'm filming on right now, the Canon T7i, didn't shoot 4K, so I was, you know, used to shooting 1080p. And so when I got the R6, I had 4K, but I didn't use it. And the reason why is because it just didn't really work for my workflow. I'm really kind of fast. I want to get on my computer, download my files, put them in a timeline, and go like that into creating a project. I don't want to have to spend the time creating proxies and managing files between proxies and normal files, all this stuff. I'd rather just dive into the project right away. And so with the computer I have right now, it just can't handle the 4K files properly. I'd have to make those proxies. And so yeah, I've just been shooting 1080p and then upscaling it to 4K. And it works great. The 1080p quality is incredible. It's really sharp, you know, especially in comparison to the Canon T7i. No offense, Canon T7i, you're a great camera, you served me well, and you still serve me well, but the R6 blows you out of the water in terms of your 1080p quality. And so I love it. And again, it works fast in Premiere, it works for me. And just as a cinematographer, in terms of just telling stories, you don't need to have the highest resolution. You don't need 4K, you don't need 8K. Does it help in terms of some small benefits, which I'll get into? Yes. But in terms of just telling a story, you don't really have to care about that much. And so that's why I'm completely comfortable shooting in 1080p for all my projects, and if I feel like I need to upscale to 4K, I will. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the image quality overall. So yeah, let's dive into autofocus. So yeah, autofocus. The Canon R6 has dual pixel autofocus, or dual pixel autofocus 2, Canon's most updated autofocus. And it's superb, especially in comparison to what I had before. Again, love your Canon T7i. I can see the face box tracking me now, but it had its limitations with the Canon T7i. You know, if a subject went from shadow to brightness, it may lose focus on the subject. And then also if the subject's walking too fast, it might lose it as well. So you really just have to be cognizant of a lot of these different factors. So it really did help me learn about that. So don't get me wrong, it worked for that. But for me, the R6, it really kind of pushed my cinematography to a new level in terms of movement. I can move around a room and, you know, go in between different objects, have objects go, you know, in frame, and, you know, the camera wouldn't think, oh, I gotta focus on that. It will stay on the face because it has that eye tracking, that face tracking, and it works. It works really well, and that's why I love it. I love the R6 for that, and especially for the kind of work that I do, which is working with a lot of people in terms of whether conducting interviews or having them move around scenes, something like that. It works for me. It works great. I love it. So the autofocus is, you know, I know there's other cameras that have great autofocus, and again, even the Canon T7i, the more budget-friendly camera, it still has good autofocus, but for what I do, for what I need, the Canon R6 works. And I'm gonna keep saying that. The Canon R6 works. It works, it works, it works. So please don't get tired of that word, because I'm gonna use it a lot throughout this. And so let's move on to stabilization. So stabilization, the Canon R6 has in-body stabilization, or also known as IBIS, and so pretty much that means that the sensor kind of shifts with the camera movement in order to kind of create a steady image. This is a great photography tool. I do photography, I also do that as well. That's more of a kind of a personal hobby of mine. I do cinematography more for work and then also for passion as well. So it is more of a photography tool, but it is useful for video as well, with some limitations as well. You do have run the risk of some wobble in the frame. I haven't had to worry about it too much. I can kind of notice it here and there, but you know, a little bit of warp stabilizer can help it a little sometimes. Also, just my solution to that is, you know, either put it on a gimbal. I have a Weebill S, which is what I use, and so, I mean, that also comes with some limitations. You know, I can't put the heavier lenses on that. I usually use a smaller prime, like a Nifty 50 for that. Another way that I kind of stabilize it, or kind of balance it all out in terms of movement to make sure I don't get that warping or that wobble, and just general camera shake as well. Like, you know, when you're holding a small camera, you tend to get that hand shake as your hands are moving really quickly. And so other ways that I kind of work around that is I just kind of build out the camera. I make a cinema rig. And so, yeah, I have this little makeshift guard. You can see the duct tape on here. And so pretty much this is my handheld rig, I guess is what you would call it. So I actually manufactured out of a shoulder rig. So yeah, I built out the camera, I put this on, I put a top handle, I put a side handle, I put a monitor on there, the ND filter, and so all that weight really helps keep the camera steady. And so you can get some really great shots with that, just building it out, adding that weight to it. But also, if you just have to strip down the camera and, you know, you're working in a confined space, let's say a car like this, you know, it actually works really well. It keeps the image pretty stable overall. And so I'm content with it. Like, yeah, if I need to shoot in, again, a car or a closet or just a small room and I just can't build out the rig like what I have, I'm totally fine hand-holding the camera and you're still getting some great results out of the Canon. So yeah, love the stabilization on that. But again, if you can stabilize it with either building out a rig or adding it to a gimbal or just putting it on a tripod, whatever it might be, that's always going to benefit in terms of that. But yeah, run and gun, if you need to use a handhold, you're fine. So it works great for run and gun filmmaking. Yeah, so let's kind of go more into the editing process with the R6. I already kind of talked about the 4K. We're not going to talk about that. We're actually going to talk about color grading. So color grading was something that I really got into last year. And with the Canon T7i, there were just a lot of limitations. It's 8-bit color file, so there's just not that much information. You really can't push the colors and then contrast and shadows and the blacks and whites and all that. It can get messy. It can get really ugly sometimes. You just can't push it that far, and so the image quality it's okay, but it just wasn't where I wanted my films to be at in terms of the color scheme and the contrast and all that. And so that's why I went for the Canon R6 over the Canon EOS R because I wanted to have 10-bit color right in camera. I know with the EOS R you can get an Atomos Ninja 5 and then shooting 10-bit externally, but I wanted it in camera. So I got the R6, and when I did my first project, which was waves, and I color graded, oh my gosh, I was blown away at how far I can push the color, how far I can push the contrast. It was great. So yeah, I love color grading R6 footage. I'm sure when I do 4K in the future, it'll be even better, and I'll talk about the limitations about that too, but color grading right now is a blast for me. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to do more and just stretch the image. I'm not going to get too abstract, but you know what I mean. Just, finding that nice little style, that style of film that you're going for, and when you finally get it, you're like, yes, this is what I was going for. So yeah. Going from that, let's talk about CLog. This is definitely something for any filmmaker who really appreciates is having a log profile, a flat profile, in which you have a wide dynamic range or large dynamic range. So that the difference between the highlights and the shadows, you want to cover that difference. And so, having CLog over just standard neutral profile in the Canon T7i has been a blessing. I can get people walking from shadows into highlights and vice versa, and the image looks great. I am so content using CLog 1. Again, there's some limitations that come with it. I wish there was a little more dynamic range within the camera. I wish we had CLog 3, which I think might come soon. I've heard rumors that might be coming to the R6, but if not, I still think the dynamic range is great. And also, it just helps you, learn the process of lighting subjects. So, if you're using a lot of natural light, you don't want the windows to be blown out, you might need to get a reflector. You might need to get a light kit. Sometimes it's those tools that actually make a shot more than just the camera itself. So, I've made those investments because I think they'll benefit, but honestly, it probably would have been a better investment just to get those first rather than the R6. Still love the R6, love it nonetheless, but I'm just saying that's something that might also benefit in terms of your filmmaking quality as well. But yeah, no, I wish there was a little more dynamic range. Also with CLog, you gotta boost up to 400 ISO, and so that also means that you might add a little more noise, especially in your shadows. You got to make sure that you expose CLog properly as well. When I was first starting out, CLog could be a bit noisy if you underexpose and you had to brighten it up a little bit, and so you want to make sure that you're exposed properly. So actually, I really love using CLog 1 for that because helps me learn how to expose properly using, especially in the monitor that I have, learning how to use false color and using zebras, all these different tools. It just kind of gives me a wider perspective how to understand exposure in lighting situations. So I love CLog for that. Again, from the limitations, I feel like you can learn stuff, and I think that's the general gist of any camera, is that your camera's going to have limitations. How can you overcome those? How can you learn from them in order to make sure that you get the quality film that you want? So yeah. So let's talk a little bit about just a few little nitpicks about the Canon R6 that I wish either would come in a future camera model or something like that, or maybe something they can introduce in a firmware update. So I mean, first of all, let's just get it off. I already mentioned it. CLog 3 would love it. Just that little extra dynamic range, especially when I'm working near windows. Maybe going from outdoor to indoor environments. That would be great. I would love if we can get CLog 2. I highly doubt that because not even the Canon R5 has that yet. But whatever works. Whatever works. But yeah, no, I'm still comfortable using CLog 1. I've learned how to, manage that, but CLog 3 would be nice. Another one would just be, I'd love to have another audio port. I know it's not really a thing with mirrorless cameras. It's more if you are investing in an actual cinema camera. So, I understand, and there are ways to work around it. There are, splitter cables, and then you just gotta merge those audio tracks in post. It's an extra step, and I'll probably go along that line in terms of fixing that, but that's just one thing. I don't think that'll ever be resolved, but maybe it will in the future. You never know. Camera companies are always trying to level each other up, and Maybe we'll get dual audio ports one year. Who knows? But yeah, and then in terms of that, I mean, the only one I haven't really experienced this yet is the overheating. I haven't experienced overheating because, again, I don't shoot in 4K, but that does kind of scare me from using 4K, especially if I do want to start taking on more long-form content. If I do want to shoot in 4K and get that image quality. So that's a little bit of a concern, but from what I've heard from firmware updates, it's really improved in terms of that. And I think the way I shoot, I should be able to manage it, but that's just one concern. Again, I haven't experienced it yet. But when I do start shooting 4K, I'll let you know if I do. I'll probably do an updated review, maybe in another 6 months, especially if I get a new laptop that lets me actually edit in 4K the way that I want to edit my films. All right, and that's the review of the Canon R6. Everyone, this camera is incredible. I love it. You know, and I hope that if you decide to get it one day, you will love it too. But don't feel like you have to invest in a camera like this right away. The cameras that you're using right now, even if it's just your cell phone, are still great. They can be cinema cameras for you if they're the tools that you can use to tell the stories that you want to create. And you know, each camera has its limitations, and as I've kind of said, you can learn from those limitations. You can learn different techniques. You can learn how to kind of craft your style as well. There's a lot of benefits from limitations in cameras that you can learn from in terms of crafting your cinematography. And again, I'm still learning from the Canon T7i. It's my B camera now, but I'm using it for this video. I really value using this camera and the experiences I've had with this camera beforehand. So, you know, whatever camera you have, go out and use it, learn from it, and when you feel like you're ready to make that next leap into something like an R6, then go for it. I highly encourage it, but again, use the tools that you have now. I'm not saying gear doesn't matter. I'm saying that gear matters when you're ready for that next step, that next leap in terms of crafting your stories. So yeah, the Canon R6 is a cinema camera in my book, and maybe one day it will be for you. But y'all, thank you so much for watching this video and subscribing to this channel, and I hope that more of you all will come in. Please share the films that you create in the comments below. I don't know if YouTube flags comments with links, but you know, just tell me you made a short film on your channel. I'll click your channel and I will watch it and I will give you feedback. Feel free to give me feedback in any of my content. Again, I love that kind of stuff. Even if it's harsh criticism, again, I appreciate it. So please, go create. I'm excited to create. I'm excited to see what you all create. So have a nice night.